Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking all about the beloved planet of Dantooine. Dantooine actually was mentioned in the very first Star Wars to Star Wars in Star Wars 1977. Did you remember that, Brian?
I did. Dantooine. They're on Dantooine. Except they're not really gonna blow up Alderaan anyway. But yeah, that was the first mention. I don't know if they mentioned Tatooine by name before that, but it was at least one of the very, very first kind of expanded galaxy pieces that we got in Star Wars. Because yeah, you get Princess Leia saying it there in A New Hope, like back before it was even A New Hope. So
yeah, and where else have we seen Dantooine? I do think we saw it in the 2003 Clone Wars animatics with Mace Windu epically destroying like a whole army of battle droids by himself. Was there anywhere else?
Yeah, so it's gotten a lot of mentions throughout canon, obviously in the 2003 Clone Wars, but then in the Clone Wars series, in the High Republic, it's gotten some mentions, and we actually see Dantooine again in the Rebels episode Secret Cargo, which came out in the third season. So Dantooine has a rich history, and I guess, if it's going to be the first planet, mentioned pretty much in the whole of Star Wars, yeah, this place is going to be pretty important. And this is not our first time there, because we go to Dantooine in the first Knights of the Old Republic, so it's like going back home when we get there, but trouble has been afoot.
Yeah, Malik kind of decimated Dantooine in the first Knights of the Old Republic, and now the ruins in KOTOR 2 are being ransacked.
Mm-hmm. Malik comes through and decimates the Jedi Enclave, which is bad news. And by the time we get back there, yeah, there's a lot of kind of infighting. There's mercenaries and archaeologists there that are trying to like sift through the rubble. There's some people there that are trying to kind of restore order a little bit when we get back there. But Dantooine still looks the same. It's kind of like this plains. And trees, they're called biba trees, I think. These big things as we're going around the Kunda Plains trying to find our missing Jedi. We meet some new companions and, try to sift through the rubble of the wake that Malik left.
Yeah, and we also see some of the different areas that weren't available in the first KOTOR, and we see some more of the library, which kind of mirrors the aesthetic from Attack of the Clones. So even though you're kind of in the same location, you get to see some new locations there, which I like. And in the new location, we meet a new character by the name of McCall. Maybe it's Michael, but he goes by the Disciple. And he kind of looks like a little bit like Luke Skywalker, and how would you describe him?
Yeah, he's got kind of this blonde, coiffed hair there, and basically at this point in his story, when we're meeting back up with him, he's kind of turned into sort of this Jedi historian. He'd worked for the Republic and is trying to basically recover artifacts and protect them and help to get the Jedi Enclave rebuilt. But McCall has a really kind of interesting story. He basically knew Mitra Surik when he was a Padawan and she was older doing some teachings. And if you go back to our KOTOR 2 I Love You episode, you'll get to learn more about that because McCall basically is in love with Mitra Surik, right?
Yeah, he kind of puts her on a pedestal. It's kind of like that Anakin and Padme to an extent. And it's interesting. It could be rewritten for the future, I think. But he wanted Mitra Surik to be his master, but that didn't work out because of the Mandalorian Wars.
Yeah, they had the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil Wars, so no one was there to teach Mikhail how to be a Jedi, so he left to work for the Republic. And yeah, now, like I said, he's basically like this historian sort of figure, which led him back to Dantooine, which is where he is when we meet him. And I really like this section going back through the Jedi Temple because, we see the Jedi Temple, in the first game, but we don't really get to explore it a ton. So it's neat to kind of go through it, even though it's been shuttered and kind of demolished and it's in ruins. It's fun to kind of go around and explore that and see how the game designers sort of designed this, which I think is really fun. And McCall is important because he tips us off to where our next missing Jedi is, and I guess it really turns out that he's not missing because he stayed on Dantooine this whole time. Master of Rook Lamar is there.
Yeah, the most beloved Rook Lamar, voiced by Ed Asner, is here on Dantooine. He never left, and of course, like, the one Jedi that survived is the one that everyone loves the most.
Yeah, that's right. Master Lamar was on the Jedi Council and made the decision to exile Mitra Surik. So I don't. It's kind of funny. We go to actually rescue him. He's been captured, kind of his own accord. He's trying to kind of bring peace between these mercenary groups and to not attack the the administration offices and stuff like that. And we go and rescue him, and he's like, "What are you doing? I thought I got rid of you. You're messing up my plan again."
Yeah, and he's just as delightful as he always has been, and I don't know, it's kind of like he's the Mace Windu of this generation, Yeah. So, yeah.
But yeah, so those are a couple of the important characters you meet. Now, if you're playing the game, if your Mitra Surik is female, Mikhail is going to join up the party, of course. So that's good. He's going to go with you on your way and kind of help you along as you adventure through the rest of the game. But there's some really fun stuff on Dantooine, I think, as you're, getting in some kind of really fun story beats. Like I mentioned, it's interesting to go back to a place that we've been to, but to see it, kind of, having been raised, and you see like these different mercenary groups and stuff hunting for artifacts. I find all of that stuff really interesting.
And you find some cool stuff, and you can really get some cool colored lightsaber crystals on Dantooine. And I think officially Mitra Surik's blade was Sion blue, and I believe you can find that crystal on Dantooine.
Yeah, one of the important characteristics of Dantooine is that it has the crystal caves, which is where you go and get your lightsaber crystals there. So it's kind of like Ilum, except it's on Dantooine. I like to think in my own head that, any place that, ancient in the Old Republic times, wherever these Jedi enclaves and things like that would have been pretty strong in the Force, whether, they kind of made the correlation or not. So I would think that there might have been these deposits of kyber crystals and force powers and things like that, kind of in these concentrated areas that the Jedi would have went to, and both in kind of a worshipping sense, but then also harvested those raw materials to create their lightsabers and things like that.
I think that too. It makes sense in my mind.
And you also get a really kind of interesting kind of mini game within a game almost as we land on Dantooine, in the Kunda Plains. Jedi Temple is gone, but the administration office is there. Like I said, Administrator Adair is there, who's kind of running this, trying to get a little bit of order back into Dantooine, against these mercenaries and treasure hunters and grave robbers and, kind of warring factions of people. And you get to go through kind of the section where you're charged with setting up the defenses for the administration office, which is kind of fun, and it really kind of leans into the fact that you were, once upon a time a general in this in Revan's army, so you kind of get to go back to your warring ways there. If you have Bowder, he can aid you in that as well. It's like old times for Mitra Surik, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of like she's returning to what essentially is the closest thing to her home. And it's kind of like her home has been destroyed and she has to kind of come back, and she can choose whether, like, to kind of help restore some order to Dantooine or just kind of let it burn, you know? So I find that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like all that stuff. I really like kind of the aspect of having, like I said, like these grave robbers and like mercenary types that are there trying to, you know, kind of pillage what's left of the Jedi artifacts and the Jedi Temple. I think you could definitely play on some of like the like Indiana Jones type things, kind of through those sections would be really fun. But I just think that I don't know. It's very fascinating, like I said, to go back to a place that you've seen kind of in all of its glory, and then ultimately gets razed to the ground by people that you used to be allies with, which makes it interesting to send Mitra Surik back there.
Yeah, and I guess this is sort of by design, but like, even though like the KOTOR 2 levels of Dantooine that we see in KOTOR 2 obviously didn't exist in KOTOR 1, it does kind of make sense that Revan wouldn't see the whole Dantooine picture, because he was kind of like being watched, you know, and like I don't think the Jedi would want him everywhere just in case he went to the dark side again. But
Yeah, and it's a weird play, like on the ramifications for all of that, right? Because Malak went and destroyed Dantooine basically because you know, Revan and crew and the first Knights of the Old Republic were trying to get to the Starforge, right, to find the star maps, and that's kind of why I went there and destroyed it. So, you know, it's interesting from that standpoint that you're going there and it's destroyed, and it's not directly a cause and effect from Mitra Surik, but like I said, these were your former allies, right? So everyone, you know, kind of associates Mitra Surik and Revan as, you know, kind of these two characters that are, you know, very closely tied because Mitra Surik served under Revan, but Malak was actually the one that recruited her to fight in the Revan sect of that army. So I think that they're pretty closely related too. So as you take a step back and you might think that, you know, Mitra Surik didn't really have anything to do with the raising of this, but ultimately, you know, she was a cog in the wheel that, you know, set this in motion to be destroyed.
yeah, and those were her friends, and what does that say about her that they did that, you know? So I guess she kind of has to examine kind of her upbringing, her home. I guess the closest thing she had to a family, her Jedi family, and like those she chose to serve by and be friends with, you know? So it's kind of like she's examining everything.
Yeah, exactly. And she does have to examine it, and we actually are going to make a return trip to Dantooine, you know, later on in our story, which will probably come through and kind of do a travel guide for kind of like the end section of the game. But this is not our only time that we're going to be spending on Dantooine. You know, we're going here the first time to you know, to search out our missing Jedi, but then once they've all been found, we're going back to where the Enclave is being built, and we kind of have this kind of final first stage of a final battle as we are starting to put the pieces together.
Yeah, and I do have to mention that the rebuilt Jedi Enclave song is probably one of the most iconic from KOTOR 2. Maybe we can put in a little bit of it right here. And because, you know, the Jedi Enclave is being rebuilt, and it's a banger song, you know?
That's right. Yeah, you need a banger of a song for rebuilding the Jedi Temple. But yeah, that is a really great piece of music. And we talked all about the music in KOTOR 2 and how like thematically well it fit into kind of the tonal parts of the game. And yeah, there's just something that's really significant, I think, about going back to the place where Mitra Surik studied the Force, learned about the Force, became a Jedi Knight, and then left, which in a sense left it vulnerable to succumb to the attack from Malak and is left in ruins, and you get back there and it's it's not a burning pile of ash, but metaphorically that's kind of what you're left with.
Yeah, and kind of looking at the exile through the lens of like KOTOR 2 being her atonement purgatory story. I kind of think Dantooine represents like she has to be self-aware and self-reflect, kind of on her past,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, and it's definitely very symbolic as you go into the Jedi Enclave. The fallen, deserted Jedi Enclave. You're literally going into like the belly of this thing, and kind of coming out on the other side. Like I said, as we kind of see it back to fruition as it's being rebuilt. But one of the things that I noticed about the Atonement and Purgatory kind of section here is one of the stages of Purgatory is Wrath, which I kind of correlated to Malak's attack on Dantooine as very kind of this wrathful thing. And I talked a little bit about, the relationship that Mitra Surik and Malak had, but kind of wrath is what I see. And then the atonement for wrath is meekness. And I think maybe that's what Mikal represents, as this kind of meek character who is left, kind of alone and vulnerable within the Jedi Order, as, all of his, mentors and teachers and, heroes all basically abandoned him and forced him to leave the Jedi Order and go out into the Republic. So I think that he's kind of our symbol of meekness as we atone for the wrath that was caused, like I said, as we were a cog in the wheel of injustice, so to speak.
Injustice. No, just kidding.
Injustice.
I'm sure both are a word, but I guess meek is in Mikal's name, So
yeah.
This is the grand symbolism and depth you're getting from our podcast, like Mikal has
That's
meek
right.
in it. So
Yeah, absolutely. But that was kind of what I saw in terms of like the atonement and purgatory side of things. But I've said it a bunch of times now. I just think that it's neat to go back to a place that has been razed to the ground, and you're seeing kind of that. And maybe it's kind of another parallel for just the weakness and the flaws of what we had seen from the Jedi and the Jedi Council over the course of Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2. Kind of their arrogance is ultimately leaving them very vulnerable, kind of that similar tone that we saw in the prequel trilogy. So maybe there's some parallels and lessons in that too.
yeah. I mean, like, I think that the Jedi Council, if they could have learned the lessons from the KOTOR, I don't know if saga's the best word, but I'll say KOTOR saga, if they would have learned those lessons, I don't think the prequel trilogy would have happened the way it did. But, I mean, sometimes these lessons, even if they're simple, are hard to learn.
Yeah, exactly. They are hard to learn, and sometimes you have to go back and face it, and that is exactly what we do on Dantooine. So, I don't know, Cassie, that's kind of a short sort of summary of Dantooine, who we meet there. Mikal is in the party now. He's on the Ebon Hawk. He is ready to go with us to our next destination, which is going to be Korriban, which should be fun to talk about. But what do you think? Is there anything else about Dantooine we need to throw out there before we, climb back on board and take off for our next stop?
It kind of reminds me of the sequel trilogy, which didn't exist, when KOTOR 2 was written, but you go to Dantooine, kind kind of like the Pillar of Light, and then you go to Korriban, the Pillar of Darkness, so you get those two extremes. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So, yeah, going to be a fun time talking about that, and it's a fun time checking in on Dantooine. Hopefully everyone's been enjoying these little travel logs we've been doing. Let us know what your favorite parts and aspects of Dantooine were, and thanks so much for joining us on this one. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.